Alright, we're here in the woods, in the dark, with low light photographer Andrew Whyte, and we're going to do a little bit of light painting and some studio lighting on this car in the background here. Sounds a bit weird, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get on with it.
The appeal of shooting at night time is that it gives you the opportunity to control all aspects of your exposure. So if you want to really bring a subject forward, you can do so with light, and by not applying light in certain areas of the frame, you end up with a really natural looking vignette, for instance. And it's a way of applying in camera techniques that photographers have used for years to develop and process photos. When you're working in a really dark environment such as this woodland, you need to be able to see what you're doing, and flashlight doesn't give you that. It's very momentary, whereas using a continuous light, it allows you to see where the light is being applied as you're working with it. So not only is it working light, but it lets you see where the light is falling onto the subject and any areas that you might need to work on. Preparing for a shoot can take quite a long time in terms of charging lots of batteries, because shooting long exposures can be very draining on power. You also need to think about your lighting. I've been working with a Westcott ice light tonight, which gives a really soft diffuse light. It's very powerful for cutting through this dark environment, but also little detail things like glow sticks to help you find your camera and tripod when you've been working away from it. And I always take a thermos flask and some tea and coffee and warm socks and a hat. There's some locations and some scenarios where I wouldn't usually feel comfortable shooting solo, and where I'd usually try and hook up with someone else who could either help me or just be a bit of social company. But for most environments, I'm quite happy working on my own. Yes, it can be time consuming, but the biggest concern is one of kind of personal safety, rather than being able to work and make progress around your subject. You have to be really thorough in the way that you're working to make sure that when you're starting off with somewhere that's very dark, that you're applying enough light even to be able to see to compose your image in the first place, even before you've started exposing. If you're working in this woodland scene, you need to make sure that there's nothing blocking any part of the subject vehicle, for instance parts of trees or a tree stump sticking up out of the ground. So you have to be very thorough with your composition. When you're composing your image, even before you've started exposing or taking a picture, when you're composing at the beginning, you need to be really thorough in the way that you set up. Check the area around your vehicle for any obstacles that might obstruct the view, because if you get several frames in, we've built an image out of many layers here, and if you get several frames in and suddenly realise there's a problem, then that could be half an hour's work that you've cost yourself, rather than if shooting in daylight, then not only do you see better, but also the expense of time is much less. Post-production is a really critical part of the assembly of the final image, because you have to think about it in advance. You have to think, where is my light going to be coming from throughout the image, because when you're building the story of an image with several layers, then it can be very easy for the layers and the lighting to become confused, and for you to start losing shadows, for instance. And your shadows is what helps to bond your subject into your scene. It gives it the context and that really strong link to the ground. You lose the shadows from your lighting, then suddenly you'll find that the car looks really artificially placed. There's a couple of really important factors to do with lighting. The first is that if you've got a really bright light, it allows you to stand further back from your vehicle, so that the lighting is softer and you get a much softer fall off of light on the ground. And the second thing is that the reflection of the light always falls in a different place to the camera, to the way that you're seeing it as you're moving around with the light. So you will see the reflection falling in one place, the camera picks it up in another, and it's really important to understand how that works so that you can get the highlights to fall in the place that you most want them in your final image. So as a final point, you'll notice that we've had the car very much off the tarmac road today, and one of the things that can do is draw attention to your activities from passing motorists. So it's always best to think about the consequences of being in this darkened area and having lights blaring out from nowhere. You never quite know who's watching. So apart from your personal safety, you've also got to bear in mind the effect that it might cause a passerby to call the police. And just think about how you're going to deal with that when they eventually turn up with blue lights flashing.